Okay, the time is now 7:01. I now call to order the meeting of the Hurley Zoning Board of Appeals for May 8th, 2025. Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
I make a motion to open the meeting.
Motion by Karen, seconded by Liston. All board members in favor, verbal aye or show of hands. All board members present in favor, none opposed. Please let the record show that board member Alex Mara is absent. Will everybody please rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May be seated. No, not just yet. I still technically have to post a public session.
Oh.
Town board hasn't dealt with that yet. I failed to write a letter to the Wills. Then I had fun. So at this time, it is time for the public comment section of the meeting. This is a time when any members of the public present are able to speak to the board and address us about anything that is on our agenda this evening. If there is any public hearing scheduled, which there are two, or two applicants sitting in the room with us, there will be given time for the public to speak at that time. However, this is a time for any members of the public present to speak on anything else on the agenda this evening. So that being said, before I open the public comment section, is there any members of the public present this evening that would like to speak to us about something other than what we will be having a public hearing on this evening? Going once, going twice, going a third time. I will make the motion to open and close the public comment section of the meeting. Seconded by Kara. Any discussion on the floor by board members?
No.
There being none, all in favor of the motion on the floor, verbal aye or show of hands. All members of the board present in favor, none opposed. All right, let's move right in to our first public hearing of the evening, which is for the applicant Ryder Moody at 291 Eagles Nest Road, or Road, as it is stated in the agenda. We heard the presentation by the applicant at our previous meeting. I know, Kara, you weren't present. However, details should be within the file contained on the shared G drive. I'm sure you're well aware of it already. I will make the motion to open the public hearing on this matter at 7:05 p.m. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second to open the public hearing by Liston Freeman. All board members present in favor, verbal aye or show of hands. All board members present in favor, none opposed. The public hearing is now open on this matter. Mr. Moody, I know you addressed the board previously about your application and why you're here before us, but this is a chance to reiterate anything, or we do have the information you additionally sent to us as well. So if you want to reference any of that or just reiterate your stance,
Sure.
Now is the time.
Yeah, just to summarize quickly from last time, I spent more than 6 months, I think up to like 9 months, going through the planning board process for the yurt that I'm building on, or hoping to build on my property. This process was meant to do visual assessment to tell if it was visible by any of the areas in the town that anyone would care about, and that was the part of the process that dragged on for so long. In the end, when they wrote up their resolution, it basically admitted that you couldn't see the yurt from anywhere, but still applied a very strict standard of requirements. The most important of which was moving the location based on intending to impose a 100-foot setback from the escarpment. We talked about this last time, but I don't have any reason to believe that the escarpment in the code is referring to anything on my property. So I don't think that 100-foot setback should apply. The other main requirements that I was appealing were the decision to force me to paint the yurt green. This was intended to make it so it wasn't easy to see, but they said in the meetings that you could only see it from a helicopter, but they still cared about that. And then the last part of that I was appealing was because I had already cut down a few trees where I had intended to build the yurt before this process showed me that I couldn't build it there. They wanted me to replant fruit trees in that area, had very specific requirements on number of trees, planting schedule, species, size. And this is in 45 acres of forested property where literally a few trees came down. So it was not, I did not feel like a reasonable visual impact mitigation to me. I'd also offered as part of that process to even lock up part of the property as forever wild. They weren't very interested in that proposal. So we really did everything we could to try and please the planning board, but ultimately they made some decisions that we disagreed with. I had emailed the video of flying a drone around the property. You can see it's all forest, and I had a much larger, actually my wedding tent up for that video, which is like 3 or 4 times the size of the yurt. And still you couldn't see it unless you were very much above anything around. So none of my neighbors have any problem with this. I don't know, one of them had said they email in support or try to show up today, but I don't see anyone in there. So yeah, no one seems to have a problem with it except the planning board. So hoping that you all can help out.
Do we have a, that video of the drone on the
We
project
do,
we
and
can
if you would
see?
like to watch the short film by Mr. Robin Moody, I believe we have it in the drive.
There's a pro move.
Trying to do everything.
It could be, yeah.
Just a little one, but yeah, the camera's pretty good. So just saying that the tent that's there in the video is much bigger than the yurt, 74-foot tent. I flew 2 different routes, so you could see it from kind of the 2 angles that you could possibly argue you could see it from. So that's the 2 routes are those 2 red arrows. So towards the flats and then across the valley there. And again, the site is really not visible from the flats. So that's my neighbor's house down the road. You can kind of see the white of the roof. I don't want to get too close to them. They're 100, 200 feet lower, and you can't see anything up there at all. Like that's all their trees, even. That
So
they
the
own.
tent is up right now.
Yeah, the tent is up right now. You'll see it once I get high up. You have to get above. Yeah, you can start to see it. But notice I'm above any tree line anywhere. Still really hard to see. That's not even my property there in front of that.
You submitted this to the planning board as well, correct?
Yeah. Those are mountains way off in the distance that you can't see from the property. And then this is now aiming more south, kind of across the ravine towards Minnewaska. So even when you're here and high up, if you look back at the property, you can't see anything there. You see the neighbor's house to the right there. And the site on the left, you can't see anything at all, even with a much bigger tent. Yeah, there's the neighbor's house.
Isn't there also a reason yurts are white? Does it have to do with the
It's more efficient, yeah. So when it's hot, they're insulated, but not extremely well, so it helps reflect the heat. So I
Right.
tried to argue that it was more energy efficient. They didn't seem to like.
Okay.
Yeah, we had talked about some other things to mitigate impact if they're worried about impact, like putting up shade cloths, but none of that. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, I mean,
First, I would like to ask if any other members of the public are here this evening to speak during the public hearing on this matter. Okay, yeah. Fire away.
I feel that, putting myself in your shoes, you come up here, you buy 50 acres and you've been in this process for over a year, I mean, I think that's sad, really, and horrible. And I'm sorry that you've had to go through that. And I think, personally, I think this is a huge overreach by the planning board. I think that he should be able to have a white yurt. And he's in the middle of the woods. I really don't see why he has to plant all these fruit trees. He's got thousands of trees around him. I think there's been a big overreach by the planning board regarding a yurt on 50 acres in the middle of the woods.
Sure, I agree.
Don't disagree.
And they didn't find, they found that there was no visual impact.
Correct. If we can,
Promptly
can we
proceeded,
go to the planning board's determination on that?
promptly proceeded.
I just wanted to bring this up for everybody, you know, I'm
Restrictions.
sure everybody was able to read the planning board determination. It kind of came in last minute, I believe, but it's there. Let's see.
Maybe.
I was
Okay.
just fine on file.
Okay, that one.
All right, and if we can roll down, there's a lot of like, you know, just their generalization stuff. Let's go down to where,
Page six,
Okay.
and
oh, back up a little bit. Yeah. Maybe this is where was page,
It's John, it's on page 6.
page 6, okay. Paul knows, exactly.
We've been through this.
All right, so, applicant proposal, applicant has proposed the yurt they believe meets the standards for visual assessment and meets their needs. Board, by a vote carried by 7 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 absent. Does carry the motion term with the conditions outlined with the determination? This was not specifically what I was looking for, but I'm sure this
Right
is,
after the now there.
Section.
okay.
Well, it's,
Okay.
yeah, it's lengthy, but it's all in there. There's the
Yeah.
action.
I know I didn't
So section
highlight
one,
exactly.
If you go back up to
Yeah,
section 1, it says the planning board finds that the proposed yurt is situated within the site in a manner where it will not be visible from nearby roadways or significant viewing points and will not adversely impact the visual environment.
So, yeah, that is.
So that is the first finding, and I think.
First finding number 1. Which is almost enough for me, but then I don't know if anybody went back and reviewed, the part of the zoning code 210-42, which literally deals with the visual
And
assessment,
subsection 5.
210-42. So
Can we bring that up on the screen?
we might have to go to E code and bring that up. I don't know if you can readily, if you type it, like if you Google town of Hurley E code, should, and it's on our, it's 210-42. And then there's specifically procedure C, D standards, and E the requirements. So all of them correctly relate to this determination.
And if you go to chapter 4 of, or no, it's.
No,
sorry, I just came in
210, chapter 210 at the bottom.
210, so.
And not to scroll down.
Did you read about this stuff?
You know, already put me on
Citing for because of where?
to this 210.
Yeah, so it's
Yep,
210, 42,
scroll on down, 42.
And then C.
and then it's.
D and E all directly.
We'll have up.
My best. 210-42, visual assessment in the
There you go.
A4 district.
Right underneath.
I'm missing it.
One down.
This one.
Right there.
Okay.
There it is.
It's like 37 text.
Then you can just click on the
Yeah.
bold part of the text. There it is. So if we scroll down a little bit to part C, procedures, Where was it, the part that I was trying to reference, in procedure? Should taking more notes while I was reviewing this all. Go down a little bit more.
Yep, right there.
Yeah, there it is, yeah. So the planning board may take one of the following actions to, after the meeting with the applicant determining that it has the complete application. They may determine, based on the available data, that the proposed building will not be visible from nearby roadways or significant viewing points, and that it will have no visual impact. There is a part about where the visual impact will take place from, which is roads, public area, public parks. So easy for me to pick this stuff out when I'm sitting here by myself.
Is it any one action or more than?
Well, it's up to
I think
you guys are the ones
multiple
who
actions,
interpret the
still,
code. But basically, it's outlined up here, the actions that they may take. So they have 5 separate sections listed here. And it's up to you how to interpret the code, as to whether, you know, the wording based on the wording where it says you may take any one of the following actions, determine that there's no visual impact, determine that, additional stuff is needed to mitigate any visual impact to the maximum extent possible. It may require additional information to serve, so that, additional information is available as serve as a basis of their decision. They may require modifications to reduce visual impact, and they may disapprove a plan, based on findings of identified visual impacts.
So these are all the criteria for visual impact, which they deemed that there was no visual impact. But there's a couple criteria that they're referencing, which is the setback off the escarpment. In D, we find the standards, okay? Planning board shall consider the following standards and guidelines in its assessment of the visual impact of the buildings. The views to be considered shall be those from public roads, public parks, or other public open spaces, the Ashokan Reservoir and its adjacent land and roadways, and the Hurley Historical District. I don't believe
It doesn't apply.
falls into the context of any of these. If we zoom back up, and I believe this was one of the first things under the visual assessments, it does reference the slopes of Tashini and Ohio Mountains, the land surrounding the Ashokan Reservoir, the escarpment above the Hurley Flats, and the agricultural lands of the flats. Based on the topography map of Mr. Moody, there is the escarpment that runs along the Hurley Flats. I do recognize that, but this is behind that, and then again, once raised after it. So in this code, I see where perhaps they could have said the Hurley Flats and the agricultural lands of the flats, but I don't determine if this is directly within 100 feet of that initial escarpment. I'm sure we all are aware of Hurley Mountain Road, and the escarpment that runs above it. And there are houses that affront that escarpment directly. This parcel is located far behind what I determined that escarpment. I understand in the topography maps that you had provided previously that they took a kind of delineated lines of the topography and then chose an escarpment past that, but I don't think it's the escarpment that's being referenced specifically here. So that is one context. If we go back down to D, the standards here, am I getting lost again? Yes, I am. Yep. Where it references vegetation.
Three.
Yeah, existing vegetation and natural growth shall be retained to the maximum extent practicable to screen buildings to avoid distinct boundary edges between natural vegetation and developed sites. Once again, if you take into context everything within this section of the code, I don't believe that there is really vegetation required to screen this yurt that already we have established is not within,
1 acres of
this-
public property.
yep, and not visible from the context of what the code is actually stating, which is the parks, the reservoir, public roadways, so on and so forth. Obviously,
Just wanna
Mr.
clarify,
Moody's
Mr. Chairman,
video.
that portion of Eagles Nest Road is not a public road, it's a private road.
Okay, well, I'm just going into context that I don't even feel like I necessarily have to explain because the planning board has already determined that there is no visual impact. But I'm just kind of trying to go in and line item how much of a farce I think this decision was.
I'm sorry.
to go
I
into this,
interrupted you, sir.
Because this is the second time we've had this exact same, we've had this exact same argument before us under the planning board. I understand the planning board has changed a little bit, but it's just kind of more us taking that time. And I want to help the board to understand context and pride, frustration. And everything. When you look at the actual code,
Yeah.
Yeah. so maybe I don't even need to go into my third point, I guess.
Yeah, he's a
But, yeah.
good.
Anyway, questions for the applicant? While the public hearing is still open.
Now this goes.
I'm looking for a definition of escarpment, but.
Yeah, it's not there.
It's not applying.
Yeah.
That's my only question. But that's in the world.
Can I just ask a couple questions? Because
Sure.
I don't know who writes these. And so they're in three places that are addressing the issues that Mr. Moody is bringing before us. It says that it's the applicant's submission. So there was a site plan and the site plan said, we're gonna put these fruit trees in. Now, if that's what's before the planning board, as opposed to the planning board saying you have to do this, but I can't tell the difference because I'm just reading this. So this says the applicant submitted a site plan with a minimum of 6 fruit trees, okay? So I'm concerned that we're attacking the planning board, saying the planning board was being unreasonable, but if an applicant starts out the process and says, this is what I'm planning to do, then, and the planning board says, okay.
So,
I think Mr. Moody-
I'll let him
Right.
reference, but I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, he came before the planning board initially and was asked to provide these things on the plan. I don't believe this was your original intention.
Correct. So I initially submitted a full site plan that had the yurt in the original intended location. Then they said we needed to move it because of the escarpment about 40 feet over. So submitted an updated site plan with the yurt moved 40 feet over. And then they said we also needed to do the planting of the trees and add that to the site plan. So definitely the first site plan did not have trees. It was only at the very end of the process when it made me add that.
Okay.
These are things being asked by the
No,
planning board.
it's fine. It's just that if this is all I have to read, that's not clear. And it's also not clear with your color. It says that the applicant's submission was painting it green.
Once again, this was a request by the planning board, correct, for muted colors.
Yeah, I mean,
You did not plan, because as I read the planning board's determination, it was clear that they requested these things.
Okay,
In my opinion.
yeah, I'm just reading applicant submission. Here's the site plan. This is what the applicant said he was gonna do. It doesn't say we told them we have to do that. So I don't have any other documents but this.
That's the only one that I have as well.
And-
I guess I just interpreted it differently.
Well, yeah,
The letter references it.
yes, but there's not, we didn't have anything in writing last time. That's when we asked for this,
Just
which
because,
we just got
just because
yesterday.
they made a decision, but conditions on it, he attempted to
Be agreeable.
Meet the-
Meet the
Meet those
criteria
conditions,
requested.
and then they said it again.
Okay,
That's what it's.
I had thought about asking them to just vote this down so I could appeal it sooner, but also wasn't sure how the appeal process would go. And so I wanted to do everything I could to get the best outcome from that process.
so the only other thing, and I know I'm being a pain in the ass, I apologize. but That drone is done like now, okay, when it's a jungle out there. We look like we live in, some Brazilian forest right now, right? It was green, everything's green. So I would have just liked to see, because 6 months of the year, there's no leaves, anything, there's no coverage. And I would have just liked to see 6 months of the year, are we gonna be looking at that white hair out there? And maybe
Well,
nobody cares.
Certainly looking at code 21042 of what the criteria is for visual assessment. My opinion, it doesn't fall within the realm of what they should be judging as a visual assessment.
It's not in the area, that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
I'll also point out the forest around is a mix of pine and hardwood. So a lot of them do have green year round, definitely less. But yeah, it's still can't see much from anywhere.
I went up there shortly after the last meeting, and there really weren't anywhere near as many leaves as months ago. And I went all over the place and figured out that there's no way you were gonna see it from anywhere. Well, except that helicopter.
Can't see it from a helicopter.
If that even matters, if it's arguably not on in the escarpment, so it's arguably not even on a protected area. If you look at the Google definition of escarpment, it says a steep hill that separates two land areas at different elevations. I think that's sort of describes flats into the woods, but then can you re-escarp once you're in the woods?
so that is the only part that I have kind of like a mixed
Yeah.
review of, and that's where I had to refer back to the code of what it directly references, the escarpment coming off of the early flats, the agricultural land. To me, that meets one criteria of that initial rise. Now, obviously, on the topography map, there is a tight grade coming up, and they established that as an escarpment as well.
Which is not.
So
I went up there and made my.
that's where I fall on both sides of it.
It's a hill.
The other side of the color and the fruit trees and him being held to a visual impact. It doesn't jive for me, but, we can have that discussion after we close the public hearing if everybody's questions are answered. There's still no members of the public that want to have any input on this matter. Well, I will make the motion to close the public hearing at 7:29 PM. Do I have a second? Seconded by Karen. Motion on the floor to close the public hearing on this matter. All in favor, verbal aye or show of hands. All board members present in favor, none opposed. So I think you know where I stand on this. My only question would be the escarpment, the 100-foot setback. I don't think it's necessarily,
The same.
you don't think it's the same thing?
No, because it is further back.
Well, he's further back now, but you are arguing that you would like to be closer essentially from where they established.
The initial location was about 30 feet closer to the escarpment, basically where the white tent was in the video, and then they had me shifted about 30, 40 feet back, which ironically means I need to cut down more trees if I want to put it 30 or 40 feet back. Or if I put it in the spot that it was originally intended, just over, you don't have to cut down any trees.
Questions on that aspect?
Listen, you went to visit and it was basically just a hill, not a.
It's not an escarpment. That's right in front of where they want to, well, right in front of where your tent was. It's, I mean, it's steep. I'd rather go down than up, but.
You can't walk it, yeah.
You know, I've been on real steep, but, it's just a valley. It's not a. Tree, there's vegetation, there's it's not separating two different elevations, it's just down and out.
Would anybody care to review a topography map?
To be
Or-
one, I just looked at
I
it.
think I could bring up like Google Maps topography. I believe that there's one already provided. But it provides, so that provides, does that provide everything down to?
If you fall.
How many square feet is the yurt?
572,
So under 1,000.
27-foot circle, diameter circle.
But that's, for, additional structure. It's any new structure or that's how I read it, or in addition to an existing structure that exceeds. the- I mean, you could have, turn it, call it, I don't know.
Mentioned this last time too, this didn't end up in the resolution, but they did also during the site visit, point at another like 20 or 30-foot slope on the property and say, oh, there's another escarpment right there. So they seem to just be defining any slope as an escarpment. It wasn't even just the one major one on that property.
And Google.
Is it 391?
And can we switch to, terrain? Yep. And then, you can probably locate parts of your property pretty easily. Yeah, we're right in,
Let's wait
basically
for-
right up in the cut there.
Yeah, zoom in to see
Zoom in a
the.
little bit more. I just want to note this, because this is a little more zoomed in than we can get, like, basically, because I'm calling this start right off of Curly Mountain Road.
Right, you look at all the dark,
We can-
that's the escarpment.
That's the path. I guess we gotta go down a little bit more, yeah. There's Eagle's Nest.
So it's quite steep right at the beginning there. And then I'm all the way up, I think about a mile back in there.
You go up around that
Zoom out
corner.
just a
Yeah, around the
little bit.
corner, turns into a private road up
Yeah,
there.
there we go.
Yeah, and I'm right there in that little flat area. Right by your mouth, yeah, just like down and right from your house. Right.
We don't have our new laser pointers yet, so.
Yeah, there it is.
It's like this flat area, the property line is here. So right
Yeah.
about there is where the yurt's gonna
Yeah.
be.
Now let's pull out just a little bit.
It's still okay.
So essentially, when I think of the escarpment off of the Hurley Flats in the agricultural area, I'm thinking of this.
Yeah, that's,
This
That's what it
line,
is.
you know, essentially. Not necessarily going up back here. Because there's a lot in between here. Obviously, you can see stuff right in here from anywhere off the flats. And, you know, along here as well.
Yeah, you can't see
So-
anything back here. And the drone video, I had flown from here to right here is where the neighbor's house is. So even them that's in front and lower, you still can't see their place from down here. And I also flew this way, really like down this way, look back at it.
yeah,
That's all topic.
So
and you can see that it just goes, it drops down and back up.
yeah, there's just like a tiny little stream running down there.
There's a little valley there, that's not separating two different kinds of landscape.
Yeah, I literally I drove around with binoculars to try and see if there was anywhere in the town you could see it from. Could not find it anywhere.
Any further discussion amongst the board? On this matter?
No, I agree with those assumptions that it's stuff that.
So, if I'm, have my finger on the,
Right, pulse.
pulse of the board, thank you very much. If we were to make a motion, it would be to recognize that there is no visual impact as stated by the planning board. And therefore, the applicant is not be held by the visual impact standards. Therefore, making the argument of the muted colors irrelevant, the setback from the escarpment irrelevant. The escarpment, I feel, is kind of a secondary thing. And then also the planting of the specific types of vegetation for screening irrelevant.
I think you're reading it.
I have a question. Is there, it sounds to me that there are two different things you guys were
The
discussing.
escarpment versus
One is
visual
whether it's even like interpreting the code as to whether it even applies. So this is saying, you know, including those areas in which development code is a great potential for visual impacts.
You're essentially saying there is no visual impact. Wipes the whole slate essentially of those.
The requirements, well, okay, so you're not making a motion to say that this section doesn't apply to his property, only that there is no visual impact on it.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's where I was a little,
Therefore,
okay.
I would think, erasing the standards of what they apply because of the visual impact, which is color, muted colors.
So
The planting of vegetation to screen
as the planning board determined that there is no visual impact, then it does not have the power
And-
to.
yes, and placement of it on the parcels away from that. So
Right.
that makes sense. It's lawyer terms.
Those are the two things that are appealing. There were a couple
So
other
you-
criteria.
So your
they had on
motion
there.
is that,
I made a
since the
motion.
planning board decided that there was no visual impact
Yeah,
pursuant to
But the
two
lights,
ten
it's not the lamp.
42 D5, that then the planning board has no power to attach conditions to mitigate a visual impact.
Seems like you two are saying the same thing.
Sounds correct, yeah.
That makes sense to me.
If it makes sense, it would be great if there's something that could say anything about the escarpment there. I do plan to build a house on the property. So hoping this doesn't all come up again then. But fine.
You'll have to go.
I'll have to apply through that.
Yeah.
Just
So all
hopefully
this
they'll
will
say
be
escarpment.
brought up again.
But maybe just like.
You see, we have institutional memory.
Oh, well. Discussion being had, I would like to make a motion to recognize the planning board's determination that there was no visual impact under 210
42.
42,
D5N.
210 4-42,
D5A.
D5A. I mean, you just go down, there's like a whole host of things, you know. But I guess that covers everything.
Damn lawyer.
And that being that there is no visual impact, they had no authority to impose conditions that
To
are
reduce
to
a
reduce
visual.
a visual impact on the applicant.
Yes, second that.
Second by Kara, there is a motion on the floor. Are all board members understanding what is of the motion being proposed, or is there any discussion? Okay. All board members in favor of the motion on the floor, verbal aye or show of hands. All board members present in favor, none opposed. And no need to roll call, that's correct.
It's been a lot of time and stress for a very long time. So really,
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of your friends are running to move to.
Did we
Harlem.
receive a check from him for the public
yeah,
hearing?
I believe so.
Did we get your check
surprised
for the
that
public
things-
hearing?
Yes,
I know there was
$100 check, yeah.
$100 check for the public hearing, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe it came in yesterday. Tomorrow.
Excellent. All right.
I missed it. Did you put it to vote? I missed it. I was ready to go.
Yeah, we denied it. We said no.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. We're like, no,
So good luck. Thank you so much.
yeah, happy building.
What are next steps?
Talk to the mayor.
Talk to that guy.
Okay.
And he gets his appeal fee returned, is that correct?
That is correct under the code.
Cool. Thank you all so much.
Not the public hearing.
That's fine.
Good luck.
All right.
Well, you're here.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank
day. Hope to not have to be here again, but I hope to see you all another time. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Okay, the next item we have before us is the continuation of the public hearing for delay at 198 Spillway Road, looking for a use variance to allow the boarding of dogs for their training there. Yes, Kara, this would be the time for you to recuse yourself. Let the record state Kara is recusing herself from the meeting.
Thank you.
Time now being 7:42 PM. I would like to make a motion to reopen the public hearing on this matter. Do I have a second? Seconded by Karen. All in favor, verbal aye or show of hands. The public hearing is now, all board members present in favor. The public hearing is now open on this matter. I know you addressed this at the last meeting during our initial, and then we caught a little snafu. So now would be your time to address this again. We do have your questions answered for the use variance as opposed to the area variance, which we can bring up on the screen. If I do that now, and you can just run down or bring any extra information you have before the board. And let's see what good, yep. Okay, so here we have the 4 criteria for granting a use variance, which have now been answered by the applicants. And do you want to just reiterate them to us, or I can read them? It's your choice.
So, we're asking to move our business, to a building that is already on our property. And it would be a boarding and training, business for dogs. As far as the criteria goes, the monetary portion of it, we have dug into other options as far as moving to a place that is actually zoned for commercial, but moving costs right now, especially trying to buy a house in a more appropriately zoned area that would be comparable to the house that we have on right now. I have some examples that I had pulled up on the internet on the next page, but the cost is astronomical and just not feasible. I also attached pieces of my P&L. So what we bring in as being a small 2-person family-owned business versus what the money that we would need to make this into a business that would survive in a new area is just, again, it doesn't seem feasible for us. And on that note, I would just also like to say that I had brought up last time that, you know, there are quite a few companies out there that are corporate owned companies that are like WAG and Rover, which are dog sitting and even training companies that people are working through them, but working out of their own home, essentially doing exactly what it is that I'm trying to do, which is board in their own home. But they don't have to go through the zoning board because they're working for this other entity and they're not trying to make a, you know, their own facility for it. As far as impacted our neighborhood. The building itself is already very residential looking. We would keep everything very residential with the idea of we would eventually like to, put up some fenced in areas obviously for the dogs so that there is limited, I'm looking for potential of them escaping the area. And we, would be taking ideas as far as keeping it looking residential and not looking like a commercial chain link, type of business. And then, and again, as far as it being unique, yes, there is companies that allow people to board in their own home, but most people are not. Everybody loves dogs, but I gotta tell you, once you start working with them on a regular basis, most people are not looking to board and deal with the amount of dogs that we put our hands on a regular basis. We have 9 kennels right now that we run, and I do anywhere between 3 and 5 training, in-person personal trainings a day. So I don't foresee a lot of people running to have this type of business at their home, a very 24/7 business. The other impact to us with this business being off of our property is a loss of our personal time, our sleep, and also time that I have to spend away from home in inclement weather. And as we all know, we live in the Northeast, so on days that it's going to be icy and rainy and whatever, I have to sleep on a cot in a shop, with the dogs because we have to make sure that we're there to take them out. And, 10 o'clock at night when we're leaving our home and driving to a facility, it's also just time away from our sleep and our home and my own animals. It's just a quality of life measure. I think I covered it. And then as far as the self-creation, again, the business was post-dates the sale of the house, us Mark buying the house, and I think that was about it.
Certainly. Is there anybody here, members of the public, that have anything to say on this?
I think it's a great idea.
Sir? Oh, okay, chauffeur, no problem. Questions for the applicant from any board members?
I'm gonna, my usual pain in the ass stuff. Is there a reason why you chose to seek a use variance versus a special use permit?
Didn't know
I
about
wasn't
special use.
aware of special use permit.
I can answer that because under the use table, it is a not permitted use as opposed to a use that requires a special use permit.
Okay, so in that particular district, it is not permitted.
There is no residential district in the town that allows kennels. And they're in a residential district.
So even with the special use permit,
There's no special use permit for a kennel. It's not permitted.
okay,
So just to clarify this, in case the board doesn't, you have use permitted by right, use permitted with site plan review, use permitted by special use permit, or not permitted. Unfortunately for Christine, she fell into the not permitted.
not permitted,
Correct.
period, okay.
Yes, the use is not permitted.
Did anybody have a chance to go up and drive up the parcel?
Yes,
Easily viewable from the side of the road.
yep, I drove up.
Okay. It is definitely a residential district. The exception of Bluestone quarry next door.
Which now is container sales.
That was special use permit.
He came before us and we denied him. For a use variance, but
They have a special use permit
they
and
didn't.
they have DEC approved it.
Interesting.
I don't know how they
That
got
was
it.
highly dramatic. I'm going back here. to the-
I check on it routinely. I drive by.
Yeah.
There was activity.
I'm digressing into something that's
So
Just the
I'm relatively new to the board, obviously, but it's my understanding that, you know, we have to really pertain to the law, and a use variance, is very hard to obtain.
Three-letter bad word,
Yeah.
essentially.
Could you explain exactly why?
So basically, it equates to spot zoning. So just in where they're located, the use isn't allowed there. And, you know, we had a zoning code for a reason. We want uniform uses, certain areas and districts. So when you're saying, okay, this property, this use, this property can have that use, it's you know, stop zoning. And it's highly frowned upon, and hence why the condition right here are
So strict.
extremely strict. So you guys will go through the criteria, look at the criteria if they apply, and you know, then you can decide accordingly. But you really, you need to go through the criteria. The other thing that I'm highly recommending is that you guys, regardless of if your variance is approved tonight, then you don't have anything to worry about. But if it isn't, to send a letter to the town board saying that we believe that would be appropriate. There are zoning changes that hopefully will eventually be passed with the zoning code allowed. So to potentially change, I don't know what, are they an A4 or A2?
8.5.
A2.5. Asking that potentially zoning be changed there to allow for, dog kennels or other types of businesses under a special use permit. And it'll probably be easier to get that done than to meet the criteria for the actual use variance. But that being said, I'm not on the board. I don't make a decision. It's them, they look through the criteria and then they apply that criteria to your situation.
They have to meet all 4 criteria, correct?
Why don't we go through the criteria and we.
Public hearing still,
Oh, sorry.
we're not gonna review it just yet. My concerns are kind of essentially what the attorney stated in that, that it becomes kind of like spot zoning. And say, okay, it's good for you guys, but we can't approve it for any of your neighbors essentially going down the street because they would have to prove the same criteria, which essentially they might be able to, and then it opens up kind of like a wormhole that, well, everybody should be able to do that. And that is outside of the preview of this board, essentially. Also, the structure itself, well, you could make the argument that, all right, well, then it should be allowed everywhere, but that's not for our board to.
Well, no, hold on.
Thank you.
What they're asking for is to run a dog care business, right? And really simple.
Well, it's not only for.
Yeah. Hold on. We know. They're asking you to do this thing that you're not really allowed to do because it's really noisy and annoying. It's very possibly very noisy and annoying and intrusive to the neighbors, right? And so it's not allowed. We're being asked to change the rules to allow it in this one spot, which does open up this spot zoning question, which is, okay, so their neighbor then wants to make kazoos and wants a kazoo testing factory. You gave them a spot variance. Now, can't we get one too? However, what I'm seeing here, which is, I think, pretty rare for a dog care business, is none of the neighbors seem to care or seem to want to say anything negative about it. There's only been positive feedback on this. And that's what makes this, like, I understand the fear of spot zoning and everybody saying me too. But when someone wants to do a kazoo factory, everybody, even the dog care place, comes and says, well, we can't have this. It's going to be crazy.
Well, it would be a harmonica factory that would probably drive zones according. There's a wild analogy, but
Well,
I appreciate it.
The last use variance that we did approve, the last one that came before us, I think, which we did end up approving, was for the printing factory up in the old church, and there were neighbors who were really concerned, and we ended up splitting some babies and doing the thing. and improving it, and it's been like a pretty, as far as I know,
Sure.
success. And
I was gonna bring that up as well as
Yeah.
the last use variance, but look at that parcel.
Yeah, it's unique.
It's extremely unique with it, and it was already almost, I mean, it was a massive church with a huge parking lot, you know.
Yeah, it was, not everybody has.
So
one.
it was, it did fit the criteria of like the surrounding district, and it had already been being used as such, and it was literally up for sale for years with nobody wanting to even approach it for anything. Residential was being proposed there, no developer wanted to take it on. This was pre-COVID, obviously. But that was one that we did grant a use variance. That parcel was highly, highly different from anything that surrounded the area.
Now, as far as neighbors, the current neighbors right now don't have any objections. But however, say they want to sell their house and somebody who wants to buy it doesn't like, you know what I mean? Like neighbors change and people's homes and home values are important. If there's a lot of, we have to
Someone would
also,
buy
I
a
think,
home
take
next
into
to a noisy
consideration.
Business, Karen?
Excuse
I
me?
think someone would buy a home next to a noisy business and not realize and then come
Well,
to this board and ask for us to do the permits. Where do we get that idea?
I'm just saying, you know, neighbors change. Neighbors are not always the same. Neighbors.
Part of the thing that I look at, throwing out business altogether, and I like the idea of you guys and what you're doing.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I'm
me
really
too.
supportive of the business.
Yes.
Yes.
There's no,
Yes.
no question
We
about
are.
that.
100%.
But I look at the parcel itself and the context of what's being presented. And upon, you know, going there and driving past, like, it's there, it's on the side of the road, you know, it's right, you know, there, it feels very residential to me. In the context of when we granted these use variances before, the parcel is immensely different from that of what has surrounded it. And that's the one use variance that I could think of that we've granted over the years. Because the parcel was so different in context and setback and was clearly out of character for the neighborhood. And that parcel was by no means, you know, could be grouped in with what was contained around it. So that's one of the things that I have a hard time kind of getting past that issue. And as the attorney said, in other instances, years and years ago, we had folks coming before us wanting to have backyard chickens. You probably remember this instance. The town was able to change the zoning code for the backyard chickens because so many requests were coming before us for backyard chickens, and they were always had to be a use variance for folks that, and it became highly evident, like, okay, this is something the town needs to address within the zoning code. And the town board was extremely happy to revisit that, take a look at it, and eventually got changed, and now people can have backyard chickens and such. I'm not saying everybody's coming before us for, you know, to have dogs at their house and such, but, this specific instance on this parcel is hard for me to check off all those criteria. That's just me personally. But we can review the criteria after the public hearing is closed and everybody can go through them. There's no further questions for the applicant. None? Do you have anything else that could address the board with? I see heard a little bit
And
of our thoughts.
you guys have you guys filled out the new,
Use variance.
so if you want to go through that criteria, like I know you filled out stuff, but if you want to elaborate on any of that, it may assist. That's basically what the board needs to determine. And basically demonstrating for each and every permitted use that these 4 criteria apply.
So, like I said, the next page, I mean, for question A, I have 2 pages of worth of an answer that I think I went above and beyond trying to, you know, show the monetary reasons.
Everybody's good.
And then, as far as. Go back to the.
Any questions?
Actually. So again, the hardship being a unique and does not supply, apply to a substantial portion of the district or the neighborhood. So I'm a full-fledged business owner. And while yes, like I said, many people may think, oh, wow, I really want to do what Daily Obedience is doing. And I want to open a even just boarding facility where I have dogs on the property, for 24 hours a day and I'm taking care of them. This is not like having dogs, your own personal pet that you put in a crate and you walk away and you go, oh, I can leave the house for 10 to 12 hours because I know that they're good in the crate and I don't have to come home. This is hands-on. I'm also dealing specifically because I'm a behavioral trainer. I am dealing with dogs that most other people cannot take into a regular boarding facility. As you heard in the last meeting, I deal with dogs that are overly afraid, that have behavioral issues, that get nervous, that have sordid pasts for whatever reason. And so being unique in the fact that serve not only the business that I have and what I'm asking to do, but also just the what I provide as far as my service and my particular background. Again, I'm a certified trainer with 3 rounds of a behavioral mentorship with one of the top trainers in this country under my belt. I turn dogs around that go from I'm going to attack small children and rip them apart to they're now living in that house perfectly fine. What I do is very different and unique. And so as far as, again, the uniqueness of even just the boarding, most, everybody loves their little foo-foo dog at home, but then when it gets really nervous because it's never been boarded before and it's pooping 7 times a day and it's great, and you're going through garbage bags and paper towels and all of this, I don't think you're going to see a lot of people asking for that. Even the Rag and Rover, people that go through them, you see a lot of really bad reviews because, again, most people go, oh, I'm going to do this as a part-time job. I work 8 hours a day in an office. I can keep the dog in a crate. I come home, I let that dog out, and I let my own dog out. And then they realize, wow, this is a lot more work than what I really looked at in the first place. And then again, for the character of the neighborhood. So I understand that we are in a very residential space and the closest house to us is right across the street, the Mowers, and they have already, we went to them, we knocked on their door. I know it's, nobody goes and knocks on a door anymore, but believe it or not, we actually like our neighbors and we did go knock on everybody's door. They were totally fine and they didn't have any issues. I think one person just asked about were we going to try to mitigate noise, that kind of thing. Next to us is a person. So if you're looking from the road at that building to the left, there's a garage and then there's that person's house. That garage is used as a studio for
Lots of
for music, and it's quite loud over there sometimes, you know what I mean? So there's other loud entities around us, including a bluestone mining 2 doors down from us, and also borders the back of our property. And again, as far as residential goes, I looked through the code. I don't see anything in the town of Hurley code that says that you can't own X amount of dogs. I don't know if maybe I overlooked it, but there really would be no difference of me going, okay, well, I'm just going to use that building to house my own personal dogs. I'm going to have 10 dogs, and that's just what I'm going to do, you know, for myself.
You would probably be correct in that. However, that's the difference of operating a business out of a residential location versus having 10 personal dogs. So you're making good arguments, but we have to adhere to kind of like, you know, the line that we have to make determination on.
Speaking along the lines though of it being, you know, keeping it residential, you know what I mean? That's just my argument as far as
Sure.
a lot of noise versus, you know, I could have neighbors with dogs. I do have neighbors with dogs that bark outside all night long, break out of the house, come running onto our porch and cause all sorts of havoc. There's real, you know, as far as stepping outside of normal residential problems and issues, right? You know, having dogs on the property, these issues always can pop up. And then, you know, I'm going to be really honest, the self-created question is a very hard one to answer. Like I said, Mark bought this house probably 25 years, 26 years, 26 years ago. I only moved into this house 16 years ago. I was a nurse before this. I changed careers. So, I mean, I guess in a way, you know, it was my choice to open this business, but I also, you know, during the time where everybody was working from home and everybody's looking to, you know, have their work for themselves and open their own businesses. Again, you know, I didn't foresee, just like you know, you don't foresee things in the future for yourself coming up. I didn't foresee changing this career. And I also had no way, you know, I can't control the cost of the housing market or commercial rental spaces, or the fact that most commercial rental spaces won't rent to me because I have, you know, the second you put animal in anything, whether it's a house or a commercial rental, becomes extremely difficult.
Questions?
I'm sort of like you with I feel the same way about the neighborhood. What you said about, you know, use variance and, you know, the essential character of the neighborhood. That's a hard one for me also. This is a hard one because what you're doing is so amazing. And, you know, like you said, we totally support what you're doing and how you're doing it. But the use variance is very tough and strict, and
I mean, it's also kind of catch-22 because there was craftspeople right a quarter mile down the road from me. There was the Red Vest that then was a catering business. There's a bluestone mining place here, you know what I mean? So it's like, there had to have been use variances granted at some point for some of these places that,
No, they were
free.
grandfathered in. They were free, not
They were free, the zoning.
all of those.
Yeah.
Or there's people who live there, they're still waiting. The red vest just there.
I can walk.
Very terrible. Terrible.
Yeah. Terrible was there.
That's, they had to move the line back. And there was another restaurant in there after the terrible. Yep. Still in
What's that building now?
Empty,
Empty.
Yes, it's
empty falling apart.
Oh, what a shame.
I got somebody this close to moving on it. To rehabilitate the property.
Really?
Yeah, finally, right? Building's terrible.
Primal Scream Gong Center.
All right, well,
It's confidential. And I
I
got
will
that.
make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter. And we'll move it to reviewing criteria. You have to see yourself for a moment. The motion is to close public hearing, seconded by Stephanie. Any discussion? Motion closed. All board members present in favor, verbal aye or show of hands for closing public hearing. All board members present, minus Kara, obviously, in favor. Okay. So let's review the criteria for, granting a use variance. The applicant cannot realize a reasonable return as demonstrated with competent financial evidence. Obviously, substantial financial evidence has been provided to us by you, both the cost savings of you moving from where you're renting at the moment, possibility of rental fees going up, moving into a different rental place, moving your house entirely. But the way this first step is usually regarded is that the property doesn't necessarily hold a value for you unless we're granting you this use variance. Which I can't really check off in my opinion, because it's still viable residential property for you. I understand the argument that you could feasibly gain a lot of savings from it, and be much easier for you as well. But I can't check that first one off. Is there any discussion with board members regarding that first matter? Or you always have a, devil's advocate point. Listen, I'm looking at you.
I mean, you added on some details to that, the house having value. That's not exact. That makes it harder than what it says out there. But
For you can't realize a reasonable return on the property, provided that the lack of return is substantial as demonstrated by competent financial evidence.
Oh, the point is that property was.
Basically meaning to me that, should really be rezoned for the use specifically because the parcel's not gonna really make a generalized return from them. We kind of went through this with the solar panels discussion previously. It's just how I've always interpreted the code on use variance. That's my personal interpretation. You guys don't have to take my
No, I
interpretation.
agree with you.
Two, the hardship is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the district or neighborhood. And this, now again, this gets into where I was saying, I always have, when it comes to use, I have to look at the parcel itself and how it is situated in the neighborhood. And, looking at it, if your neighbor with music garage, I don't think that he's running a music business either, I don't know, but if he wanted to start having boarding, running not that that's gonna necessarily happen. But you have to look and say, okay, do all these houses in this residential district around here, do they have the same problem where they couldn't be boarding dogs as their business if it came before us? And I'd have to answer that, yes, they'd all have to come to us saying that they're not allowed the same exact thing under the same confines of the size and how the buildings are situated and such. So I can't cross that one off either, unfortunately. Is there a discussion on that?
what if for both of these, you consider the fact with the property next to them changed in usage from normal residential usage to a loose conformity, that's affected the value of their house and the resale value, because it has, right? They couldn't sell that for the same.
I was bringing up that Bluestone parcel specifically because that's a little
Yeah.
thorn in my side regarding this whole thing. And they were before us, but remember, they came to us for the exact same thing, we denied.
Yeah.
Now Paul's
You
saying
guys-
that
you
he,
guys come to that? And said like, you have a river flowing through your property already.
that's what I recognize.
Yeah.
And we denied them, but Paul, you're saying that that was an allowable use? Or it's special
No,
use,
what I'm saying-
that's all under the
What I'm
land.
saying is
Oh,
that
it's just-
Corey, I'm looking it up right now, and that's playing on my phone. Extraction and mining services, of which that is only allowed in the A4. I was actually at that public hearing for a client when you reviewed that tonight, I remember that. And, I have been out there, I met with the DEC uniformed officers, and somehow he was granted approval from the planning board, and he got a mining permit from the DEC.
So that's how he circumscribed our,
I don't know, it was all the land.
And if the use is banned and they don't allow special permits for it, then.
I don't know if he reapplied to the planning board under some different auspices or some different use and got approval under, again, I wasn't at those meetings. I was at a couple of planning board meetings where Pete and Nikos were.
Yeah, yep.
But I wasn't there when it was ultimately approved. But there was engineering, there's a mining plan, there's a reclamation plan, there's a DEC permit. And I've been out there with the DEC.
Yeah, there's like what's allowed and there's what's actually happening. What's actually happening is not a white picket fence in a nice little neighborhood. What's happening is a serious for business that is affecting the value of their home if it's just regarded as a home.
regardless.
100%,
This,
100%, I agree with that.
so good. Regardless, when that issue was before us as well, it also,
That we deny them, but that doesn't. that
they
doesn't
didn't
change the
stop them
reality.
from doing, working around us.
Yeah, I don't know how he ultimately got approval. There was a long stretch where I didn't represent any clients in Hurley, whether it was planning or zoning, and that's when that approval was granted.
Does anybody have any further input on number two before we move on to number three? Number three, the requested variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Based off of what they have presented to us and, the folks that have come and spoke for them, I can't necessarily immediately that it would, however, you know that things could get noisy. I could go either way on number three, but it's not changing my thoughts on number one or number two, unfortunately. I would love to believe that they're not gonna change the essential character of the neighborhood and would be far less intrusive than what's going on down the road. Any input on number three? Number four, the hardship has not been self-created. You all always have the problem with answering that question.
That's a hard one.
Yeah. So in an aspect that everybody is trying to tighten up these days because costs of everything are going through the roof astronomically. Of course, this isn't a self-created hardship that they're trying to do things and bring in closer to themselves and do it on their own property. However, it's not allowed in the district. And they're looking to establish that, so. It's kind of a mixed bag on that.
I think they were nice, polite neighbors and didn't focus on it, but I think your best angle to take would be saying that the hardship is the change in the neighborhood that has happened around. And they're being agile in finding value in a home that has lost value because
Commercial
because
enterprise
of
is running
people's
next door.
special use permits, yeah. So there you go. I know. Go back, really.
So. Board has heard thoughts on this. Are you comfortable making a decision this evening? Do you know where you stand? We do have up to 60 new days to make a decision on this. If anybody wants to revisit the parcel, or if you feel you're, in a good place where you've taken in all the considerations and reviewed the criteria, you know, make a vote.
I'm ready to vote.
Well, we need a resolution now.
A motion.
Motion to pass a resolution, right?
Well, nobody's made a motion yet. I'm just hearing the board as to how they feel, if they're ready to vote.
I just feel like it would be useless to keep going another month, and unless you guys want to go visit the property, we haven't seen the property. But I'm sort of for moving things along for people and not,
Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to vote on the,
For a motion on the
application for the use variance, for the dailies. I'm not used to making motions, so bear with me, please. I'm new to the board.
Somebody worked for my gun company, so.
Matt,
So are you looking to make a motion to approve the variance or or deny the variance?
I'm making a motion to deny the variance.
My second.
Second by Stephanie. There is a motion on the floor to deny the use variance. Discussion amongst board members. Stephanie.
The situation. I
Um,
need to go over.
all right, let's take a vote. All board members in favor of the motion on the floor, which is to deny the use variance application, verbal aye or show of hands. That's the hand. All board members,
It's painful.
against the motion on the floor? Orin is against the motion on the floor. That leaves it 4 ayes and 1 nay. And Kara, I'm still abstaining or recusing. Regretfully inform you that your application for use variance has been denied. However, I don't think this is the end for you.
We know you gotta go by the book.
This is one of those really hard ones that are really.
Yeah.
want to walk in and be
No, you
like,
have a
"Yeah,
job to do."
man, Go for it, but we've been through enough stuff at the store. And that's why I'm gonna contact the business, out across your team, dot our i's. But, attorney's office is gonna be there, so showing you the stuff you know that.
No, I'm with her.
There's got other avenues.
I mean, it sounds funny.
We're just.
I read the unfortunate part of what we have to do here. It also, a lot of times, applications like yours bring things to the forefront that bring about real change in our zoning code. And nobody's able to really address these things unless matters like yours aren't before us.
You know what? Further use.
I don't want to expect.
Something's already
out.
Yeah, the Catholic parish.
Comes down to that.
What's that? Yeah. I know you should have 2 minutes.
All right, we're gonna, we know.
Minutes. Everybody get a chance to review.
They're in our own place.
She's just throwing it back and bring it back.
Yeah, we're ready for Woodstock Carly.
In the catechism?
Yeah.
Oh, that's your place, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna get there now.
You know what?
We're looking to move it there.
Okay, there's other, that I don't have to say.
Okay, I was gonna say,
No, we're not running the business.
There are other kennels in the- They're, let's say kennel friendly. There's some more kennel friendly.
Yeah, it's just a matter of money and speaking up with sell a house. Buy some with interest rates and everything. Yes,
It's brutal.
It's outrageous.
Uh,
Let's go see what.
did you get to review the minutes?
I did.
Okay. Any, edits by everybody? I have a couple. They're very minor. And as usual.
I've been trying to be less persuasive.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
I will just give you this whole thing. It's very easy. So one of them I had was on page number 2. I think it's like 4th paragraph down where it begins with Chair Josh Vogt made a motion that the applicant will submit. I scratched out a new application and I said answers for criteria for a use variance.
Hold
Because
on.
we didn't ask for
Where are
a
you?
whole, page number 2,
Page 2.
4th, maybe 5th paragraph, remember there, starts with Chair Josh Vogt made a motion.
Yep, okay.
Originally it says submit a new application. We just asked for answers for the use criteria.
Okay.
So I scratched out a new application and put answers for criteria for a use variance.
Okay,
Because that's essentially what we asked for, and essentially what we received,
okay.
but not an entire new application.
Okay.
Page number 3. And this is just me being thorough because this regards the Greaves Perfect application. 2nd paragraph down, maybe 3rd if you count a sentence. The board discussed each of the criteria listed in section 109-13C. And then I just wanted to add at length during the previous meeting and again at this meeting,
What I would say.
because we went like over an hour discussing that criteria. It doesn't really reference that, so I just figured to add that into the minutes, because we already got.
Oh, I figured.
Regarding that.
The solo counts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
it? Wow.
that's all the submission. So, yep, I'll leave this for you. And then I think that was the only thing. All right, so then on the very last page where it's I'm talking about, talking to the town board about not having a public hearing anymore. Zamara wrote, I will make a draft resolution. I just said I was gonna make a draft, write a letter. Yeah, I don't draft resolutions, no way. I ain't getting involved in that. So just scratching resolution, making it letter.
Where are you again?
It's the very last page,
Okay.
2nd paragraph
Oh,
down,
right,
says
right.
Chair Josh Vogt made a motion to draft a resolution
Write a letter.
letter. Yes, I've always just drafted a letter and then I let them write their own resolution.
Right.
So minor. Yeah, yours printed out slightly differently. That's probably right here again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure it's both of them.
Yep. You just do that. That'll make it easy. So I would like to make a motion to approve the previous minutes with those amendments. Seconded by Stephanie. All board members present in favor of approving the minutes with those amendments. Verbal or show of hands, all board members present in favor, none opposed. Oh, you got something to talk to us about?
I missed 2 meetings and the decision on Ed Arzel's situation, is that on the shared drive? I didn't receive a copy of it.
Should be, and I believe Matt wrote a very thorough in-depth kind of.
Okay, so I can find it on the drive.
If it's not on our shared drive, which it may not be, it should certainly be included on the town's real drive. If not, during Jane
I'll
Council.
make sure I'll look tomorrow.
Thank you.
Between me and tomorrow, we'll look.
It exists, I can assure you that. Where it exists, I cannot.
He was granted the area variance for the 10-foot fence.
Yes.
The reason being I have to have it because he's got 1 year to exercise the variance.
Right.
And Mr. Sutherland's gonna be paying for it, so who knows if he's ever gonna apply for the fence. So if he wait another 10 months,
Or even think about it.
submits, I gotta deny it and send it back to you.
Yeah.
No, I'll hold
The
it.
clear hadn't started, that's why I said I need it.
Well, there is a thorough,
They were
you know,
here.
there's that whole
Nobody-
write-up by Mr.
Nobody was
Morello.
here from this, but we approved it.
Yeah, that could have there and didn't contain any Mr. Moriello's thing that he made us all. sign
Well,
at the time.
apparently the court decision just was finally filed, like Matt got it last week, so I'm gonna wait a couple weeks, because I need that too.
I'll look tomorrow. But I remember him having it, but I don't remember.
Really?
He should look at what's.
But it might be in the
That's
drive.
generally not something like that shared drive that we just look at. I can't imagine any that would have ever passed on to our drive.
Conditional approvals, unsigned approval, signed approval, the planning board has everything. I'm not saying it's easy to get through. You guys are a lot simpler, but I just never go on to see.
It might be on the email because I put it on the stakes, so it might be on that. I'll look
Now
tomorrow.
that I think they're. No, I don't think that you have a good evening.
That's all I got.
Excellent. Paul shares, yeah, I hope he's got somebody coming in new to the office, right? The young lady that I know.
3 weeks ago, yeah, 3 weeks ago, well, 2 weeks ago, Monday.
Your assistant, your new assistant?
Yes.
Nice. How's that going?
So far, so good. She was in case for 3 years.
Oh, so she knows, she
She's code
knows.
certified, she's a veteran in the field, she just was more in the housing inspection than the permanent inspection, and they don't do zoning in that office or site plans, so she has to learn municipal code and the myriad of other agencies that are involved with my office.
And she's got to get used to town early town hall.
She has a desk, an office, and a
I'm there every day.
So anyway, if it works out, the expectation is she's the future of my office.
Great.
So it's gotta work.
That's how Alan Teixeira got to be building inspector in Woodstock.
No, she
Or she was the
graduated from
assistant.
clerk. No, she was a
Oh,
clerk.
clerk, she was clerk.
And
Okay.
Paul Idris, when he was up there, he did it to most clerks, they'll get certified, and they all went on to become part of it.
You know,
I'm friends with Ellen. I know, she's good lady.
All right, so is there anything that anybody else has?
Ellen was-
You brought board coordinator?
Do we have anything? We don't have other applications.
There's no new applications at the moment, but don't hold your breath.
So May 29th. Excuse me, May 29th was the submission deadline.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So there's very good, I mean, it's springtime, everybody's going, there's a very good chance we'll have new applications, but at the moment,
We're clean
we're
now.
clear. We're clear.
Yeah, that's okay.
Aside from multiple lawsuits, I guess. Okay, I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yay.
Second by Stephanie, all in favor, verbal aye or show of hands. We already know, all present in favor of adjourning the meeting, none. Thank you, everybody.